I have Wes. Wes will accompany me home. Everything will be fine. Those were the last words that 20-year-old Keeley Bunker said to her best friend Monique before starting her journey back home in the early hours of the 19th of September 2019. They had just celebrated Keeley's birthday at a nightclub in Birmingham, England. They had danced, laughed, and enjoyed a perfect night. And when it was time to go back home to Tamworth, Keeley trusted someone she had trusted her whole life. Wesley Street, her friend since elementary school, the boy who lived near her house, the boy who had promised to make sure she got home safe and sound. But Keeley never made it home. She never made it to her job interview that morning. She never fulfilled her dream of becoming a teacher because the friend she trusted betrayed her in the most horrible, unimaginable way. Hours later, Keeley's body was found face down in a stream in Wiggington Park. She had been raped, strangled, and hidden under branches as if she were trash. And the monster who did this was Wesley Street, the same man who had promised to protect her. This is the story of Keeley Bunker, a story about betrayed trust, about a predator hiding in plain sight, and about 3 more victims who finally found the courage to speak out. This is a story that should never have happened. To understand the magnitude of this tragedy, we must first know who Keeley Bunker was. Keeley was born on the 6th of September 1999 in Tamworth, Staffordshire, England. She was a petite young woman. She was only 1.49 meters tall and weighed just 41 kilograms. But what she lacked in physical stature, she made up for 1,000 times over with her giant spirit. Everyone who knew Keeley said the same thing. She was one of the kindest, most loving, and innocent people you would ever meet. She had a bright smile that could light up any room. She was the kind of person who always thought of others before herself, and was always willing to help a friend in need. Keeley grew up in Tamworth, a market town in the West Midlands of England. It was a small community where everyone knew each other. Keeley attended the local primary school and then secondary school. She wasn't the best student academically, but she had something more valuable, a passion for helping others, especially children. From a very young age, Keeley knew exactly what she wanted to do with her life. She wanted to be a teaching assistant. She wanted to work with young children, help them learn, watch them grow. She loved children, and they adored her. She had that special quality of connecting with the little ones, making them feel safe and happy. In September 2019, Keeley was working as a waitress while waiting for the perfect opportunity to start her career in education. On September 19, the same day she disappeared, she had a scheduled interview for a teaching assistant position. It was the opportunity she had dreamed of. She was excited and nervous. She had told all her friends about the interview. It was the first step toward her future, but Keeley never made it to that interview. Her future, all her dreams, all her hopes, were taken from her the night before by someone she completely trusted. Keeley had a loving family. Her mother, Davy Watkins, was her best friend. She also had siblings who adored her. She was a devoted daughter, a loving sister, and a loyal friend. On her social media, she shared moments from her life, photos with friends, messages about her plans for the future, and funny memes. She was a normal 20-year-old young woman living her life, enjoying her youth. And among her many friends was Wesley Street. They had known each other since elementary school, had grown up together in Tamworth, and he lived near Keeley's house. They were part of the same social circle. They often smoked cannabis together with other friends in Wiggington Park, about 4 times a week, according to their own testimony. Keeley was never Wesley's girlfriend. There was never a romantic relationship between them. They were simply friends. And Keeley trusted him. Why wouldn't she? She had known him since they were children. He had never given her any reason to distrust him, or at least that's what she thought. What Keeley didn't know, what no one knew, was that Wesley Street was a predator, a serial rapist, a monster hidden behind a facade of normality. And in the early hours of the 19th of September 2019, that monster would finally take off the mask. Wednesday, the 18th of September 2019, was a day Keeley had been eagerly awaiting. She had tickets to see H, a British rapper, in concert at the O2 Institute in Birmingham. Keeley was a big fan of H. Days before, she had tweeted, "The only thing keeping me going is seeing H on Wednesday. Hopefully he'll see me and we'll get married." But there were more reasons to celebrate. Keeley had just turned 20 a few days earlier, on September 6, so that night would be a double celebration, her birthday and her favorite artist concert. That afternoon, Keeley got ready excitedly, put on a nice dress, did her makeup, and took some selfies she posted on her social media. In the photos, she looked radiant, happy, full of life. She had no idea those would be the last photos she would take alive. Keeley met up with her best friend, Monique Rigon, and together they took the train from Tamworth to Birmingham. The concert was amazing. Keeley and Monique danced, sang loudly to the songs, and enjoyed every moment. It was exactly the perfect night Keeley had imagined. After the concert, around midnight, Keeley and Monique met Wesley Street at Birmingham New Street Station. Wesley had also been in Birmingham that night. They decided to go together to a nightclub called Snobs, a popular spot among young people. At Snobs, the trio drank, danced, and had fun. CCTV footage from the club shows them having a good time, laughing, with no visible tension. Wesley drank considerably more than the girls. For every drink they had, he had 3. As the night went on, Wesley was quite drunk. Around 2:40 a.m. on September 19, they decided it was time to leave. They left the club and took a taxi back to Tamworth. The taxi ride was quiet. The 3 friends chatted casually as the car drove through the dark streets back to their town. The taxi dropped them off at Monique's house in Tamworth around 4 a.m. At that moment, Monique asked Keeley if she wanted to stay over at her house. Keeley's house was about a 20-minute walk from there, and it was already late. But Keeley declined the offer. "I have that interview later today," she told Monique. "I want to sleep a bit in my own bed before that." Then Monique looked at Wesley and asked if he could make sure Keeley got home safe and sound. Wesley lived near Keeley's house, so he was going that way anyway. Wesley nodded. "Of course," he said. "I'll make sure she gets home okay." Keeley smiled at Monique. "I have Wes," she told her friend. "Wes will walk me home. Everything will be fine." Those were the last words Monique heard from her best friend. Keeley and Wesley walked away together into the early morning darkness. Monique went inside her house tired but happy after a great night. She had no idea of the nightmare that was about to unfold. Keeley and Wesley began walking from Monique's house toward Keeley's house. The route was fairly straightforward. It should take about 20 minutes on foot. The streets were empty and silent. It was that early morning hour when everyone is asleep, when even Tamworth, a normally bustling town, feels like a ghost town. At 4:23 a.m., a CCTV camera near Tamworth Rugby Club captured footage of Keeley and Wesley walking together. The video is chilling when you know what would happen next. It shows Keeley and Wesley hugging, but the experts who analyzed the video for the trial said it didn't look like a friendly hug. It seemed like Keeley was trying to pull away and Wesley was holding her back. According to Wesley's later testimony, he claimed that at that point on the road they started flirting. He stated that Keeley was teasing him, that she was looking at him suggestively. But this version of events contradicts everything we know about Keeley and her relationship with Wesley. They were just friends. Keeley had never shown romantic interest in Wesley. And, more importantly, Keeley was tired. She had been partying all night and just wanted to get home to sleep a little before her important interview that morning. But the truth, according to the prosecution and the evidence presented at trial, is very different from Wesley's story. The truth is that Wesley had been planning this. At some point on the road, Wesley convinced Keeley to detour to Wiggington Park. He probably suggested going to smoke a little, something they had done together many times before in that same park. Keeley, unsuspecting, agreed. Wiggington Park is a large area with wooded zones, a creek, and many secluded spots. At 4:30 inches the morning, it was completely deserted. There was no one around, no witnesses, no one who could hear screams, and it was there, in the darkness of that park, that Wesley Street showed his true nature. He attacked Keeley, raped her, and while raping her, strangled her to death. The autopsy revealed that Keeley died from strangulation. Wesley strangled her with such force, and for so long that it caused her death. It was not an accident, as he later claimed. Forensic pathologists testified that to kill someone by strangulation requires between 10 and 15 seconds of sustained pressure around the neck for the victim to lose consciousness, and several more minutes to cause death. This is not something that happens accidentally. Keeley had scratch marks on her neck. The prosecution argued that these marks were caused when Keeley desperately tried to loosen Wesley's grip, trying to remove his hands or arms from her neck to breathe. She fought for her life, but against a bigger, stronger, and heavier man she had no chance. Keeley Bunker was 1.49 meters tall and weighed 41 kilograms. Wesley Street was much bigger and stronger than her. He physically dominated her effortlessly, and, when he was done with her, when he had satisfied his depraved urges, he disposed of her body like trash. Wesley dragged Keeley's lifeless body to a shallow creek in the park. He placed her face down, under the water. Her underwear was pulled down to her ankles. Then, deliberately, he covered her body with branches and foliage, trying to hide her. It was not a momentary panic act, it was calculated. It was a conscious effort to hide the evidence of his crime. And after doing this, after raping and murdering his childhood friend, after hiding her body in a creek like trash, what did Wesley Street do? He simply walked home, went to bed, and slept. And Keeley was supposed to wake up early that morning on September 19 to prepare for her interview, but when her family tried to wake her, she was not at home. Initially, they thought maybe she had stayed with Monique after all, but when they called Monique, she told them no, that Keeley had insisted on going back home with Wesley. They tried calling Keeley. There was no answer. Their calls went straight to voicemail. They sent text messages. Nothing. As the hours passed, concern turned to fear. Keeley had never done anything like this. She always answered her phone. She always kept her family informed and, more importantly, she would never have missed that job interview. It was too important to her. At 5:30 p.m., on September 19, approximately 13 hours after Keeley was last seen alive, her father, Christopher, officially reported her disappearance to the police. Immediately, both the police and Keeley's family and friends began searching for her. Posters with Keeley's photo were placed all over Tamworth. Social media exploded with pleas for help to find her. The hashtag #FindKeeley became a local trend. Hundreds of people, many of whom didn't even know Keeley personally, volunteered to help with the search. The police spoke with Wesley Street early in the investigation, as he was the last known person to be with Keeley. Wesley gave them a detailed story. He said that he and Keeley had walked together for part of the way but had parted ways at a phone booth at the intersection of Mayfield Drive and Wordsworth Avenue near his house. He said they had hugged there, said goodbye, and each went their own way. That was the last time he saw her, Wesley claimed. The officers asked Wesley to show them exactly where they had separated. Wesley agreed, got into the police car, and guided them through the streets of Tamworth, showing them the route he and Keeley had taken, and pointed out the phone booth where, according to him, they had said goodbye. Throughout this, Wesley appeared cooperative, helpful, and concerned about his missing friend. But the investigators wanted to see Wesley's phone. When they asked for it, Wesley became nervous. This was a red flag for the investigators. He didn't want to hand it over. Why would someone with nothing to hide refuse to hand over their phone during the search for their missing friend? While Wesley was with the police, Keeley's family and friends continued searching desperately. They combed the streets of Tamworth, checked every alley, every park, every place Keeley might be. And it was during this search that the inevitable happened. Around 9 p.m. on September 19, Keeley's uncle, Jason Brown, was searching with a group in Wiggington Park. It was an area they knew well, as Keeley and her friends often spent time there. Jason ventured toward the creek area, using a flashlight to light his way in the dark, and then he saw it. A body in the creek, partially covered by branches. Jason approached with his heart pounding, praying it wasn't what he feared. But when he moved some of the branches aside, he saw the dress Keeley had been wearing the night before. It was her. Jason Brown let out a scream. According to another search team member who was nearby, it was the most horrible scream or shriek I have ever heard in my life. It was the sound of a man who had just found his niece dead, the sound of a heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. Paramedics were called immediately. They arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. Keeley was dead. Rigor mortis had already set in. No pulse was detected. Little Keeley Bunker, who just wanted to get home to sleep before her job interview, was dead in a creek, raped and murdered by someone she had trusted her whole life. About an hour after Keeley's body was found, at 11 p.m. on September 19, police arrested Wesley Street. When officers arrived to arrest him, they noticed something immediately. Wesley had fresh scratches on his face. When asked how he got them, Wesley mumbled vague excuses and had no convincing explanation. Wesley was taken to the police station. During the ride in the police car, his behavior was chilling. Instead of asking about Keeley, or showing shock or sadness upon learning his friend had been found dead, Wesley asked if there would be food available when he arrived at the station. He was hungry. He had just learned that his supposed childhood friend had been murdered, and his concern was whether he could eat something. At the police station, Wesley initially stuck to his phone booth story. He insisted that he and Keeley had parted ways there, that he had gone straight home, and that he had no idea what had happened to Keeley after that. But the investigators knew he was lying. They had analyzed the GPS data from his mobile phone, and that data told a completely different story. The data showed that Wesley had never gone to the phone booth. Instead, he had gone in the opposite direction, moving away from his house and into Wiggington Park. The GPS data placed him exactly in the area where Keeley's body was found, right at the time she must have died. Confronted with this evidence, Wesley refused to make any comment. He simply sat in silence, knowing he had been caught in a lie. But the evidence against Wesley was overwhelming and kept mounting. DNA analysis found Keeley's DNA on Wesley's body, specifically under his nails. This matched the scratches on his neck. Keeley had fought. She had scratched her attacker while desperately trying to break free. Deadly grip. Wesley's DNA was also found on Keeley's body. Forensic evidence confirmed there had been sexual activity. Keeley had been raped before being murdered. CCTV footage proved that Wesley had lied about his route. The video showed him and Keeley entering Wiggington Park together, not separating at the phone booth as he had claimed. Wesley was formally charged with rape and murder, but even after his arrest, confronted with mountains of evidence against him, Wesley kept lying. In fact, he changed his story not once, but 4 different times before the trial. First, he said they had separated at the phone booth. When that lie was disproved, he gave a no-comment interview to the officers. Then he told a psychiatrist a new story, that Keeley had tripped and hit her head, and had died in his arms accidentally. Finally, when it became clear that none of these stories would work, he invented his final version. Wesley Street's trial began in July 2020 at Stafford Crown Court. He had been charged with the rape and murder of Keeley Bunker, as well as multiple additional charges of rape and sexual assault against 3 other victims. But we will talk about those other victims in a moment. During the trial, Wesley finally testified in his own defense and for the first time admitted that he had indeed killed Keeley, but his version of events was designed to minimize his guilt and paint himself as a victim of unfortunate circumstances. Wesley claimed that he and Keeley had started flirting on the way home. He said they were exchanging suggestive looks, and that when they entered the park they began kissing. He claimed that Keeley was happy with this and that she wanted to have sex with him. According to Wesley, they began having consensual sex in the park, and at some point, during the sexual act, he put his forearm around her neck. Wesley claimed it was part of the sex, that Keeley had consented. But then, suddenly, Keeley went limp. He realized she was dead. "I started to panic, pacing back and forth," Wesley testified. "I felt like running because I was scared, very scared." He claimed he checked her pulse, realized she was dead, but never thought to call the police. "Why didn't he call the police if it was an accident?" "Because I was scared and ashamed," Wesley said. So instead, he hid the body in the creek, covered it with branches, and went home to sleep. Then he repeatedly lied to Keeley's family, friends, and the police about what had happened. The prosecution, led by Jacob Hallamsey, tore this version of events apart. They pointed out that Keeley had never shown any romantic interest in Wesley, that they were just friends. She had an important job interview that morning and just wanted to get home to sleep. The prosecutors argued that the CCTV footage showed Keeley trying to get away from Wesley near the park entrance, not playing as Wesley claimed, and that the scratches on Keeley's neck were caused by her desperately trying to loosen Wesley's grip as he strangled her. And most importantly, medical experts testified that it takes 10 to 15 seconds of sustained pressure for someone to lose consciousness from strangulation, and several more minutes of continuous pressure to cause death. This is not something that happens accidentally during sex. This requires sustained and deliberate effort. Wesley Street did not kill Keeley Bunker accidentally. He killed her deliberately. The prosecution also highlighted Wesley's behavior after Keeley's death. He showed no remorse, did not call an ambulance, did not try to help her. Instead, he hid her body, covered the evidence, and then went home to sleep. The next day, when Keeley's family and friends were desperately searching, when her mother was crying for her missing daughter, Wesley was acting normally, helping in the search, lying about where he had been. He even returned to the body several times throughout that day, according to his own testimony, to cover her with more branches. His only concern was not for Keeley, but for himself. He said he was thinking, "Why? I didn't want this to happen. How did I end up in this position?" It was all about him, never about Keeley. When the prosecutor asked him if he was selfish, Wesley replied, "No. I put her in that pond, and that's something I have to live with." Not even then could he admit the full truth of what he had done.